In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 135, narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, the prayer of a person who does hadith, passes urine, stool, or wind, is not accepted till he performs the ablution. A person from Hadramaut asked Abu Huraira, what is hadith? Abu Huraira replied, hadith means a passing of wind. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 136, narrated New and al-Mujmir. Once I went up the roof of the mosque, along with Abu Huraira. He performed ablution and said, I heard the Prophet saying, on the day of resurrection, my followers will be called al-Ghurul, muhajjalin from the trace of ablution, and whoever can increase the area of his radiance should do so, i.e. by performing ablution regularly. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 137, narrated Abbas bin Tamim. My uncle asked Allah's apostle about a person who imagined to pass wind during the prayer. Allah's apostle replied, he should not leave his prayers unless he hears sound or smells something. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 138, narrated Quraib. Ibn Abbas said, the Prophet slept till he snored and then prayed, or probably lay till his breath sound were heard, and then got up and prayed. Ibn Abbas added, I stayed overnight in the house of my aunt Maymuna. The Prophet slept for a part of the night. See Fath al-Bari, page 249, volume 1. And lay in the night, he got up and performed ablution from a hanging water skin, a light perfect ablution, and stood up for the prayer. I, too, performed a similar ablution. Then I went and stood on his left. He drew me to his right and prayed as much as Allah wished, and again lay and slept till his breath sounds were heard. Later on the Mu'adh din, call maker for prayer, came to him and informed him that it was time for prayer. The Prophet went with him for the prayer, without performing a new ablution. Sufyan said to Amr that some people said, the eyes of Allah's apostle sleep, but his heart does not sleep. Amr replied, I heard Ubayd bin Umar saying that the dreams of prophets were divine inspiration, and then he recited the verse, I, Abraham, see in a dream, O my son, that I offer you in sacrifice to Allah. 37.102. See Hadith number 183. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 139. Narrated Usama bin Zaid. Allah's apostle proceeded from Arafat till when he reached the mountain pass. He dismounted, urinated, and then performed ablution, but not a perfect one. I said to him, is it the time for the prayer, O Allah's apostle? He said, the place of prayer is ahead of you. He rode till when he reached Al-Muzdalifah. He dismounted and performed ablution, and a perfect one. The call for Iqamah was pronounced, and he led the Maghrib prayer. Then everybody made his camel kneel down at its place. Then the Iqamah was pronounced for the Isha, prayer which the Prophet led, and no prayer was offered between the two. Prayers, Isha and Maghrib. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 140. Narrated Atta bin Yasar. Ibn Abbas performed ablution and washed his face. In the following way, he laid out a handful of water, rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose with it by putting in water and then blowing it out. He then took another handful of water and did like this, gesturing, joining both hands, and washed his face, took another handful of water and washed his right forearm. He again took another handful of water and washed his left forearm, and passed wet hands over his head, and took another handful of water and poured it over his right foot up to his ankles, and washed it thoroughly, and similarly took another handful of water, and washed thoroughly his left foot up to the ankles, and said, I saw Allah's apostle performing ablution in this way. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 141. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, if any one of you on having sexual relations with his wife said, and he must say it before starting, in the name of Allah, O Allah, protect us from Satan, and also protect what you bestow upon us, i.e., the coming offspring, from Satan. And if it is destined that they should have a child, then Satan will never be able to harm that offspring. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 142. Narrated Anas. Whenever the Prophet would answer the call of nature, he used to say, Allahumma inni udubaika min al-kabuthi wal kabit O Allah, I seek refuge with you from all offensive and wicked things, evil deeds and evil spirits. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 143. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Once the Prophet entered a lavatory, and I placed water for his ablution. He asked who placed it. He was informed accordingly, and so he said, O Allah, make him Ibn Abbas, a learned scholar in religion, Islam. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 144. Narrated Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Allah's apostle said, if any one of you goes to an open space for answering the call of nature, he should neither face nor turn his back towards the Qibla. He should either face the east or the west. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 145. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. People say, whenever you sit for answering the call of nature, you should not face the Qibla or Baitul Maqdis, Jerusalem. I told them, once I went up the roof of our house and I saw Allah's apostle answering the call of nature while sitting on 2 bricks facing Baitul Maqdis, Jerusalem. But there was a screen covering him. Fath al-Bari, page 258, volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 146. Narrated Aisha. The wives of the Prophet used to go to Al-Manasi, a vast open place near Baqi at Medina, to answer the call of nature at night. Umar used to say to the Prophet, let your wives be veiled, but Allah's apostle did not do so. One night, Sauda bint Zam, the wife of the Prophet, went out at Isha time, and she was a tall lady. Umar addressed her and said, I have recognized you, O Sauda. He said so, as he desired eagerly that the verses of Al-Hijab, the observing of veils by the Muslim women, may be revealed. So Allah revealed the verses of Al-Hijab, a complete body cover excluding the eyes. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 147. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet said to his wives, you are allowed to go out to answer the call of nature. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 148. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. I went up to the roof of Hafsa's house for some job, and I saw Allah's apostle answering the call of nature facing Sham, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, and Lebanon regarded as one country, with his back toward the Qibla. See Hadith number 147. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 149. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Once I went up the roof of our house and saw Allah's apostle answering the call of nature while sitting over 2 bricks facing Baitul Maqdis, Jerusalem. See Hadith number 147. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 150. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Whenever Allah's apostle went to answer the call of nature, I, along with another boy, used to accompany him with a tumbler full of water. Hisham commented, so that he might wash his private parts with it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 151. Narrated Anas. Whenever Allah's apostle went to answer the call of nature, I, along with another boy from us, used to go behind him with a tumbler full of water. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 152. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Whenever Allah's apostle went to answer the call of nature, I, along with another boy, used to carry a tumbler full of water for cleaning the private parts, and a short spear or stick. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 154. Narrated Abu Qatada. The Prophet said, whenever any one of you makes water, he should not hold his penis or clean his private parts with his right hand. And while drinking, one should not breathe in the drinking utensil. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 155. Narrated Abu Huraira. I followed the Prophet while he was going out to answer the call of nature. He used not to look this way or that. So when I approached near him, he said to me, fetch for me some stones for cleaning the private's parts, or said something similar, and do not bring a bone or a piece of dung. So I brought the stones in the corner of my garment and placed them by his side, and I then went away from him. When he finished from answering the call of nature, he used them. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 156. Narrated Abdullah. The Prophet went out to answer call of nature and asked me to bring 3 stones. I found 2 stones and searched for the third, but could not find it. So took a dried piece of dung and brought it to him. He took the 2 stones and threw away the dung and said, this is a filthy thing. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 157. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet performed ablution by washing the body parts only once. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 158. Narrated Abdullah bin Zaid. The Prophet performed ablution by washing the body parts twice. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 159. Narrated Humran. The slave of Uthman. I saw Uthman bin asking for a tumbler of water, and when it was brought, he poured water over his hands and washed them thrice, and then put his right hand in the water container, and rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it, and then blowing it out. Then he washed his face and forearms up to the elbows thrice, passed his wet hands over his head, and washed his feet up to the ankles thrice. Then he said, Allah's apostle said, if anyone performs ablution like that of mine, and offers a 2-rakat prayer during which he does not think of anything else, not related to present prayer, then his past sins will be forgiven. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 160. After performing the ablution, Uthman said, I am going to tell you a hadith which I would not have told you, had I not been compelled by a certain holy verse. The sub-narrator, Urwa, said, this verse is, verily, those who conceal the clear signs and the guidance which we have sent down, 2:159. I heard the Prophet saying, if a man performs ablution perfectly and then offers a compulsory congregational prayer, Allah will forgive his sins committed between that prayer and the next prayer till he offers it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 161. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, whoever performs ablution should clean his nose with water by putting the water in it and then blowing it out, and whoever cleans his private parts with stones should do it with odd number of stones. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 162. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, if any one of you performs ablution, he should put water in his nose and then blow it out, and whoever cleans his private parts with stones should do so with odd numbers. And whoever wakes up from his sleep should wash his hands before putting them in the water for ablution, because nobody knows where his hands were during sleep. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 163. Narrated Abdullah bin Amr. The Prophet remained behind us on a journey. He joined us while we were performing ablution for the ASR prayer, which was overdue, and we were just passing wet hands over our feet, not washing them thoroughly. So he addressed us in a loud voice, saying twice, save your heels from the fire. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 164. Narrated Humran. The freed slave of Uthman bin Affan. I saw Uthman bin Affan asking for a tumbler of water to perform ablution, and when it was brought, he poured water from it over his hands and washed them thrice, and then put his right hand in the water container and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out. Then he washed his face thrice and then forearms up to the elbows thrice, then passed his wet hands over his head and then washed each foot thrice. After that, Uthman said, I saw the Prophet performing ablution like this of mine, and he said, if anyone performs ablution like that of mine and offers a 2-rak at prayer during which he does not think of anything else, not related to present prayer, then his past sins will be forgiven. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 165. Narrated Muhammad ibn Zaid. I heard Abu Huraira saying as he passed by us while people were performing ablution from utensil containing water, perform ablution perfectly and thoroughly for a bull qasim. The Prophet said, save your heels from the hellfire. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 166. Narrated Abaid ibn Jurayj. I asked Abdullah bin Umar, O Abu Abdurrahman, I saw you doing 4 things which I never saw being done by any one of you companions. Abdullah bin Umar said, what are those, O Ibn Jurayj? I said, I never saw you touching any corner of the Kaaba except these 2, facing south Yemen, and I saw you wearing shoes made of tan leather and dye your hair with henna, a kind of red dye. I also noticed that whenever you were in Mecca, the people assume Ihram on seeing the new moon crescent, first of Dhul Hijjah, while you did not assume the Ilul, Ihram. Ihram is also called Ilul, which means loud calling, because a Muhrim has to recite Talbiyah aloud when assuming the state of Ihram, to the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, day of Tarwiyah. Abdullah replied, regarding the corners of Kaaba, I never saw Allah's apostle touching except those facing south Yemen. And regarding the tan leather shoes, no doubt I saw Allah's apostle wearing non-hairy shoes, and he used to perform ablution while wearing the shoes, i.e. wash his feet and then put on the shoes. So I love to wear similar shoes. And about the dyeing of hair with henna, no doubt I saw Allah's apostle dyeing his hair with it, and that is why I like to dye my hair with it. Regarding Ilul, I did not see Allah's apostle assuming Ilul till he set out for Hajj on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 167. Narrated Atiyah, that the Prophet at the time of washing his deceased daughter had said to them, start from the right side, beginning with those parts which are washed in ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 168. Narrated Aisha, the Prophet used to like to start from the right side on wearing shoes, combing his hair and cleaning or washing himself, and on doing anything else. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 169. Narrated Anas bin Malik, saw Allah's apostle when the ASR prayer was due and the people searched for water to perform ablution, but they could not find it. Later on, a pot full of water for ablution was brought to Allah's apostle. He put his hand in that pot and ordered the people to perform ablution from it. I saw the water springing out from underneath his fingers till all of them performed the ablution. It was one of the miracles of the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 170. Narrated Ibn Sirin. I said to Abida, I have some of the hair of the Prophet, which I got from Anas or from his family. Abida replied, no doubt if I had a single hair that it would have been dearer to me than the whole world and whatever is in it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 171. Narrated Anas. When Allah's apostle got his head shaved, Abu Talha was the first to take some of his hair. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 172. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, if a dog drinks from the utensil of any one of you, it is essential to wash it 7 times. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 173. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, a man saw a dog eating mud from the severity of thirst. So that man took a shoe and filled it with water and kept on pouring the water for the dog till it quenched its thirst. So Allah approved his deed and made him to enter paradise. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 174. And narrated Hamza bin Abdullah, my father said, during the lifetime of Allah's apostle, the dogs used to urinate and pass through the mosques, come and go. Nevertheless, they never used to sprinkle water on it, urine of the dog. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 175. Narrated Adi bin Hatim. I asked the Prophet about the hunting dogs, and he replied, if you let loose with Allah's name, your tame dog after a game and hunts it, you may eat it, but the dog eats of that game, then do not eat it because the dog has hunted it for itself. I further said, sometimes I send my dog for hunting and find another dog with it. He said, do not eat the game, for you have mentioned Allah's name only on sending your dog and not the other dog. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 176. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, a person is considered in prayer as long as he is waiting for the prayer in a mosque, as long as it does not do hadith. A non-Arab man asked, O Abu Huraira, what is hadith? I replied, it is the passing of wind from the anus. That is one of the types of hadith. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 177. Narrated Abbas bin Tamim. My uncle said, the Prophet said, one should not leave his prayer unless he hears sound or smells something. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 178. Narrated Ali. I used to get emotional urethral discharges frequently and felt shy to ask Allah's apostle about it. So I requested al-Miqdad bin al-Aswad to ask the Prophet about it. Al-Miqdad asked him, and he replied, one has to perform ablution after it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 179. Narrated Zayd bin Khalid. I asked Uthman bin Affan about a person who engaged in intercourse but did no discharge. Uthman replied, he should perform ablution like the one for an ordinary prayer, but he must wash his penis. Uthman added, I heard it from Allah's apostle. I asked Ali Aziz Zubair, Talha, and Ubay bin Ka'b about it, and they, too, gave the same reply. This order was cancelled later on, and taking a bath became necessary for such cases. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 180. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Allah's apostle sent for an Ansari man, who came with water dropping from his head. The Prophet said, perhaps we have forced you to hurry up, haven't we? The Ansari replied, yes. Allah's apostle further said, if you're forced to hurry up during intercourse, or you do not discharge an ablution, is due on you. This order was cancelled later on, i.e. one has to take a bath. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 181. Narrated Usama bin Zaid. When Allah's apostle departed from Arafat, he turned toward a mountain pass where he answered the call of nature. After he had finished, I poured water, and he performed ablution, and then I said to him, O Allah's apostle, will you offer the prayer? He replied, the Muzalla, place of prayer, is ahead of you in Al-Muzdalifah. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 182. Narrated Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah. I was in the company of Allah's apostle on one of the journeys, and he went out to answer the call of nature, and after he finished, I poured water, and he performed ablution. He washed his face, forearms, and passed his wet hand over his head and over the two cuff. socks made from thick fabric or leather. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 183, narrated Abdullah bin Abbas, that he stayed overnight in the house of Maymunah, the wife of the Prophet, his aunt. He added, I lay on the bed, cushioned transversely, while Allah's apostle and his wife lay in the lengthwise direction of the cushion. Allah's apostle slept till the middle of the night, either a bit before or a bit after it, and then woke up, rubbing the traces of sleep off his face with his hands. He then recited the last 10 verses of Surah Al-Imran, got up and went to a hanging waterskin. He then performed the ablution from it, and it was a perfect ablution, and then stood up to offer the prayer. I, too, got up and did as the Prophet had done. Then I went and stood by his side. He placed his right hand on my head and caught my right ear and twisted it. He prayed 2 rak, at then 2 rak, at and 2 rak, at, and then 2 rak, at, and then 2 rak, at, and then 2 rak, at, separately 6 times, and finally 1 rak, the witr. Then he lay down again in the bed till the Mu'adhin came to him, whereupon the Prophet got up, offered a 2 light rak at prayer, and went out and led the far prayer. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 184, narrated Asma bint Abu Bakr. I came to Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, during the solar eclipse. The people were standing and offering prayer, and she was also praying. I asked her, what is wrong with the people? She beckoned with her hand toward the sky and said, Subhan Allah. I asked her, is there a sign? She pointed out, yes. So I, too, stood for the prayer till I fell unconscious, and later on I poured water on my head. After the prayer, Allah's apostle praised and glorified Allah and said, just now I have seen something which I never saw before at this place of mine, including paradise and hell. I have been inspired and have understood that you will be put to trials in your graves, and these trials will be like the trials of Ad-Dajjal, or nearly like it. The sub-narrator is not sure what Asma said. Angels will come to every one of you and ask, what do you know about this man? A believer will reply, he is Muhammad, Allah's apostle, and he came to us with self-evident truth and guidance. So we accepted his teaching, believed, and followed him. Then the angels will say to him to sleep in peace, as they have come to know that he was a believer. On the other hand, a hypocrite or a doubtful person will reply, I do not know, but heard the people saying something, and so I said the same. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 185, narrated Yahya al-Mazini. A person asked Abdullah bin Zayd, who was a grandfather of Amr bin Yahya, can you show me how Allah's apostle used to perform ablution? Abdullah bin Zayd replied in the affirmative and asked for water. He poured on his hands and washed them twice. Then he rinsed his mouth thrice and washed his nose with water thrice by putting water in it and blowing it out. He washed his face thrice, and after that he washed his forearms up to the elbows twice, and then passed his wet hands over his head from its front to its back and vice versa, beginning from the front, and taking them to the back of his head up to the nape of the neck, and then brought them to front again from where it started, and washed his feet up to the ankles. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 186, narrated Amr. My father saw Amr bin Abi Hassan asking Abdullah bin Zayd about the ablution of the Prophet. Abdullah bin Zayd asked for earthenware pot containing water, and in front of them performed ablution like that of the Prophet. He poured water from the pot over his hand, and washed his hands thrice, and then he put his hands in the pot and rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose by putting water in it, and then blowing it out with 3 handfuls of water. Again he put his hand in the water, and washed his face thrice, and washed his forearms up to the elbows twice, and then put his hands in the water, and then passed them over his head by bringing them to the front, and then to the rear of the head once, and then he washed his feet up to the ankles. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 187, narrated Abu Juhayfa. Allah's apostle came to us at noon, and water for ablution was brought to him. After he had performed ablution, the remaining water was taken by the people, and they started smearing their bodies with it as a blessed thing. The Prophet offered 2 rak out of the Zuhr prayer, and then 2 rak out of the Asr prayer, while a short spear or stick was there as a sutra in front of him. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 188. Abu Musa said, the Prophet asked for a tumbler containing water and washed both his hands and face in it, and then threw a mouthful of water in the tumbler and said to both of us, Abu Musa and Bilal, drink from the tumbler and pour some of its water on your faces and chests. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 189, narrated Ibn Shihab. Mahmud bin Arabi, who was a person on whose face the Prophet had ejected a mouthful of water from his family's well while he was a boy, and Urwa, on the authority of Al-Maswar and others who testified each other, said, whenever the Prophet performed ablution, his companions were nearly fighting for the remains of the water. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 190, narrated as Abi bin Yazid. My aunt took me to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, this son of my sister has got a disease in his legs." So he passed his hands on my head and prayed for Allah's blessings for me. Then he performed ablution, and I drank from the remaining water. I stood behind him and saw the seal of prophethood between his shoulders. It was like the Zirizla means a button of small tent, but some said egg of a partridge, etc. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 191, narrated Amr bin Yahya, on the authority of his father. Abdullah bin Zayd poured water on his hands from a utensil containing water and washed them. And then with one handful of water, he rinsed his mouth and cleaned his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out. He repeated it thrice. He then washed his hands and forearms up to the elbows twice and passed wet hands over his head, both forwards and backwards, and washed his feet up to the ankles and said, "This is the ablution of Allah's apostle." Sahih Bukhari Hadith 192, narrated Amr bin Yahya. My father said, I saw Amr bin Abi Hassan asking Abdullah bin Zayd about the ablution of the Prophet. Abdullah bin Zayd asked for an earthenware pot containing water and performed ablution in front of them. He poured water over his hands and washed them thrice. Then he put his right hand in the pot and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing out thrice with 3 handfuls of water. Again, he put his hand in the water and washed his face thrice. After that, he put his hand in the pot and washed his forearms up to the elbows twice, and then again put his hand in the water and passed wet hands over his head by bringing them to the front and then to the back, and once more he put his hand in the pot and washed his feet up to the ankles. Narrated Wahab, that he, the Prophet in narration 191 above, had passed his wet hands on the head once only, Sahih Bukhari Hadith 193, narrated Abdullah bin Umar. During the lifetime of Allah's Messenger, Saws, men and women used to perform ablution together. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 194, narrated Jabir. Allah's apostle came to visit me while I was sick and unconscious. He performed ablution and sprinkled the remaining water on me, and I became conscious and said, O Allah's apostle, to whom will my inheritance go, as I have neither ascendants nor descendants? Then the divine verses regarding Farid inheritance were revealed. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 195, narrated Anas. It was a time for prayer, and those whose houses were near got up and went to their people to perform ablution, and there remained some people sitting. Then a painted stove pot, mikdab, containing water was brought to Allah's apostles. The pot was small, not broad enough for one to spread one's hand in. Yet all the people performed ablution. The sub-narrator said, we asked Anas, how many persons were you? Anas replied, we were 80 or more. It was one of the miracles of Allah's apostle. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 196, narrated Abu Musa. Once the Prophet asked for a tumbler containing water. He washed his hands and face in it, and also threw a mouthful of water in it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 197, narrated Abdullah bin Zayd. Once Allah's apostle came to us, and we brought out water for him in a brass pot. He performed ablution thus. He washed his face thrice, and his forearms to the elbows twice, then passed his wet hands lightly over the head from front to rear, and brought them to front again and washed his feet, up to the ankles. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 198, narrated Aisha. When the ailment of the Prophet became aggravated and his disease became severe, he asked his wives to permit him to be nursed, treated in my house. So they gave him the permission. Then the Prophet came to my house with the support of 2 men, and his legs were dragging on the ground between Abbas and another man. Ubaidullah, the sub-narrator, said, I informed Abdullah bin Abbas of what Aisha said. Ibn Abbas said, do you know who was the other man? I replied in the negative. Ibn Abbas said, he was Ali bin Abi Talib. Aisha further said, when the Prophet came to my house and his sickness became aggravated, he ordered us to pour 7 skins full of water on him, so that he might give some advice to the people. So he was seated in a mikdab, brass tub, belonging to Hafsah, the wife of the Prophet. Then all of us started pouring water on him from the water skins till he beckoned to us to stop, and that we have done what he wanted us to do. After that he went out to the people. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 199. Narrated Ammar bin Yahya. On the authority of his father. My uncle used to perform ablution extravagantly, and once he asked Abdullah bin Zayd to tell him how he had seen the Prophet performing ablution. He asked for an earthenware pot containing water, and poured water from it on his hands, and washed them thrice, and then put his hand in the earthenware pot, and rinsed his mouth, and washed his nose by putting water in it, and then blowing out thrice with one handful of water. He again put his hand in the water, and took a handful of water, and washed his face thrice, then washed his hands up to the elbows twice, and took water with his hand, and passed it over his head from front to back, and then from back to front, and then washed his feet up to the ankles, and said, I saw the Prophet performing ablution in that way. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 200, narrated the bit. Anas said, the Prophet asked for water and a tumbler with a broad base and nose so deep, containing a small quantity of water, was brought to him whereby he put his fingers in it. Anas further said, notice the water springing out from amongst his fingers. Anas added, estimated that the people who performed ablution with it number between 70 to 80. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 201. Narrated Anas. The Prophet used to take a bath with one sa up to 5 muds. One sa equals muds of water, and used to perform ablution with 1 mud of water. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 202. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas said, the Prophet passed with hands over his cuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Abdullah bin Umar asked Umar about it. Umar replied in the affirmative and added, whenever Sa'd narrates a hadith from the Prophet, there is no need to ask anyone else about it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 203. Narrated Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah. Once Allah's apostle went out to answer the call of nature, and I followed him with a tumbler containing water. And when he finished, I poured water, and he performed ablution, and passed wet hands over his cuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 204. Narrated Ja'far bin Ammar bin Umayyah ad-Damri. My father said, I saw the Prophet passing wet hands over his cuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 205. Narrated Ja'far bin Ammar. My father said, I saw the Prophet passing wet hands over his turban and cuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 206. Narrated Urwa bin al-Mughira. My father said, once I was in the company of the Prophet on a journey, and I dashed to take off his cuffs, socks made from thick fabric or leather. He ordered me to leave them as he had put them after performing ablution, so he passed wet hands over them. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 207. Narrated Abdullah bin Abbas. Allah's apostle ate a piece of cooked mutton from the shoulder region and prayed without repeating ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 208. Narrated Ja'far bin Ammar bin Umayyah. My father said, I saw Allah's apostle taking a piece of cooked mutton from the shoulder region, and then he was called for prayer. He put his knife down and prayed without repeating ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 209. Narrated Suwayd bin al-Nu'man. In the year of the conquest of Khaybar, I went with Allah's apostle till we reached Saba, a place near Khaybar, where Allah's apostle offered the ASR prayer and asked for food. Nothing but sawiq was brought. He ordered it to be moistened with water. He and all of us ate it, and the Prophet got up for the evening prayer, Maghrib prayer, rinsed his mouth with water, and we did the same, and he then prayed without repeating the ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 210. Narrated Maymunah. The Prophet ate a piece of mutton from the shoulder region and then prayed without repeating the ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 211. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostle drank milk, rinsed his mouth, and said it is fat. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 212. Narrated Aisha. Allah's apostle said, if any one of you feels drowsy while praying, he should go to bed, sleep. Till his slumber is over, because in praying while drowsy one does not know whether one is asking for forgiveness or for a bad thing for oneself. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 213. Narrated Anas. The Prophet said, if any one of you feels drowsy while praying, he should sleep till he understands what he is saying, reciting. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 214. Narrated Ammar bin Namir. Anas said, "The Prophet used to perform ablution for every prayer." I asked Anas, "What did you used to do?" Anas replied, "We used to pray with the same ablution until we break it with Hadith." Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:15. Narrated Suwaid bin Nu'man. In the year of the conquest of Khaybar, I went with Allah's apostle till we reached As-Saba, where Allah's apostle led the ASR prayer and asked for food. Nothing but sawiq was brought, and we ate it and drank water. The Prophet got up for the Maghrib prayer, rinsed his mouth with water, and then led the prayer without repeating the ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:16. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Once the Prophet, while passing through the graveyards of Medina or Mecca, heard the voices of two persons who were being tortured in their graves. The Prophet said, "These two persons are being tortured not for a major sin to avoid." The Prophet then added, "Yes, they are being tortured for a major sin. Indeed, one of them never saved himself from being soiled with his urine, while the other used to go about with calumnies to make enmity between friends." The Prophet then asked for a green leaf of a date palm tree, broke into two pieces, and put one on each grave. On being asked why he had done so, he replied, "I hope that their torture might be lessened till these get dried." Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:17. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Whenever the Prophet went to answer the call of nature, I used to bring water with which he used to clean his private parts. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:18. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet once passed by two graves and said, "These two persons are being tortured not for a major sin to avoid. One of them never saved himself from being soiled with his urine, while the other used to go about with calumnies to make enmity between friends." The Prophet then took a green leaf of a date palm tree, split it in two pieces, and fixed one on each grave. They said, "O Allah's apostle, why have you done so?" He replied, "I hope that their punishment might be lessened till these, the pieces of the leaf, become dry." See the footnote of Hadith 2:15. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:19. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet saw a Bedouin making water in the mosque and told the people not to disturb him. When he finished, the Prophet asked for some water and poured it over the urine. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:20. Narrated Abu Huraira. A Bedouin stood up and started making water in the mosque. The people caught him, but the Prophet ordered them to leave him and to pour a bucket or a tumbler of water over the place where he had passed the urine. The Prophet then said, "You have been sent to make things easy and not to make them difficult." Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:21. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said as above, 219. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:22. Narrated Aisha, the mother of faithful believers. A child was brought to Allah's apostle, and it urinated on the garment of the Prophet. The Prophet asked for water and poured it over the soiled place. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:23. Narrated Umkayz bint Myson. I brought my young son, who had not started eating ordinary food, to Allah's apostle, who took him and made him sit in his lap. The child urinated on the garment of the Prophet. So he asked for water and poured it over the soiled area and did not wash it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:24. Narrated Hadhaifa. Once the Prophet went to the dumps of some people and passed urine while standing. He then asked for water, and so I brought it to him, and he performed ablution. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:25. Narrated Hadhaifa. The Prophet and I walked till we reached the dumps of some people. He stood, as any one of you stands, behind a wall and urinated. I went away, but he beckoned me to come. So I approached him and stood near his back till he finished. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:26. Narrated Abu Wail. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari used to lay great stress on the question of urination, and he used to say, if anyone from Bani Israel happened to soil his clothes with urine, he used to cut that portion away. Hearing that, Hadhaifa said to Abu Wail, I wish he, Abu Musa, didn't lay great stress on that matter. Hadhaifa added, Allah's apostle went to the dumps of some people and urinated while standing. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 2:27. Narrated Asma. A woman came to the Prophet and said, if any one of us gets menses in her clothes, then what should she do? He replied, she should take hold of the soiled place, rub it and put it in the water and rub it in order to remove the traces of blood, and then pour water over it. Then she can pray in it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 228. Narrated Aisha. Fatima bin Abi Hubaysh came to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, I get persistent bleeding from the uterus and do not become clean. Shall I give up my prayers?" Allah's apostle replied, "No, because it is from a blood vessel and not the menses. So when your real menses begins, give up your prayers, and when it's finished, wash off the blood, take a bath, and offer your prayers." Hisham, the sub-narrator, narrated that his father had also said, "The Prophet told to perform ablution for every prayer till the time of the next period comes." Sahih Bukhari Hadith 229. Narrated Aisha. I used to wash the traces of janaba, semen, from the clothes of the Prophet, and he used to go for prayers while traces of water were still on it. Water spots were still visible. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 230. Narrated Aisha, as above, 229. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 231. Narrated Sulaiman bin Yasar. I asked Aisha about the clothes soiled with semen. She replied, I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's apostle, and he would go for the prayer while water spots were still visible. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 232. Narrated Amr bin Maimun. I heard Sulaiman bin Yasar talking about the clothes soiled with semen. He said that Aisha had said, I used to wash it off the clothes of Allah's apostle, and he would go for prayers while water spots were still visible on them. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 233. Narrated Abu Kalaba. Anas said, some people of Uqal or Urana tribe came to Medina, and its climate did not suit them. So the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of milch camels and to drink their milk and urine as a medicine. So they went as directed, and after they became healthy, they killed the shepherd of the Prophet and drove away all the camels. The news reached the Prophet early in the morning, and he sent men in their pursuit, and they were captured and brought at noon. He then ordered to cut their hands and feet, and it was done. And their eyes were branded with heated pieces of iron. They were put in al-Hara, and when they asked for water, no water was given to them. Abu Kalaba said, those people committed theft and murder, became infidels after embracing Islam, and fought against Allah and his apostle. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 234. Narrated Anas. Prior to the construction of the mosque, the Prophet offered the prayers at sheepfolds. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 235. Narrated Maymuna. Allah's apostle was asked regarding ghee, cooking butter, in which a mouse had fallen. He said, take out the mouse and throw away the ghee around it and use the rest. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 236. Narrated Maymuna. The Prophet was asked regarding ghee in which a mouse had fallen. He said, take out the mouse and throw away the ghee around it and use the rest. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 237. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, a wound which a Muslim receives in Allah's cause will appear on the day of resurrection, as it was at the time of infliction. Blood will be flowing from the wound, and its color will be that of the blood, but will smell like musk. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 238. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, we Muslims are the last people come to the world, but will be the foremost on the day of resurrection. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 239. The same narrator said that the Prophet had said, you should not pass urine in stagnant water, which is not flowing then. You may need to wash in it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 240. Narrated Abdullah, while Allah's apostle was prostrating, as stated below. Narrated Abdullah bin Mas'ud. Once the Prophet was offering prayers at the Kaaba, Abu Jahl was sitting with some of his companions. One of them said to the others, who amongst you will bring the abdominal contents, intestines, etc., of a camel of Bani so, and put on the back of Muhammad when he prostrates? The most unfortunate of them got up and brought it. He waited till the Prophet prostrated, and then placed it on his back between his shoulders. I was watching but could not do anything. I wish I had some people with me to hold out against them. They started laughing and falling on one another. Allah's apostle was in prostration, and he did not lift his head up till Fatima, Prophet's daughter, came and threw that camel's abdominal contents away from his back. He raised his head and said thrice, O Allah, punish Quraysh. So it was hard for Abu Jahl and his companions when the Prophet invoked Allah against them, as they had a conviction that the prayers and invocations were accepted in this city, Mecca. The Prophet said, O Allah, punish Abu Jahl, Utbah bin Rabi A, Shaiba bin Rabi A, Al-Walid bin Utbah, Umayyah bin Khalaf, and Uqba bin al-Mu'it? And he mentioned the seventh, whose name I cannot recall. By Allah, in whose hands my life is, I saw the dead bodies of those persons who were counted by Allah's apostle in the Kalib, one of the wells, of Badr. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 241. Narrated Anas, the Prophet once spat in his clothes. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 242. Narrated Aisha, the Prophet said, all drinks that produce intoxication are haram, forbidden to drink. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 243. Narrated Abu Hazim, Saul bin Sa'di as-Sa'idi, was asked by the people, with what was the wound of the Prophet treated? Saul replied, none remains among the people living who knows it better than I. Ali used to bring water in his shield, and Fatima used to wash the blood off his face. Then straw mat was burnt, and the wound was filled with it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 244. Narrated Abu Burda. My father said, I came to the Prophet and saw him carrying a sawak in his hand and cleansing his teeth, saying, you, as if he was retching while the sawak was in his mouth. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 245. Narrated Hudhaifa. Whenever the Prophet got up at night, he used to clean his mouth with sawak. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 246. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, I dreamt that I was cleaning my teeth with sawak, and two persons came to me. One of them was older than the other, and I gave the sawak to younger. I was told that I should give it to the older, and so I did. Sahih Bukhari Hadith 247. Narrated Al-Bara bin Azib. The Prophet said to me, whenever you go to bed, perform ablution like that for prayer. Lie on your right side and say, Allahumma slam to waji alaika, wa fawad to amri alaika, wa alitu zari alaika ragbatan wa rabban alaika. La maljae wa la manja minka illa alaika. Allahumma man to bikidabika eladi, and zalta wa binabayika eladi arzalta. O Allah, I surrender to you and entrust all my affairs to you, and depend upon you for your blessings, both with hope and fear of you. There is no fleeing from you, and there is no place of protection and safety except with you, O Allah. I believe in your book, the Qur'an, which you have revealed, and in your prophet, Muhammad, whom you have sent. Then if you die on that very night, you will die with faith, i.e., or the religion of Islam. Let the aforesaid words be your last utterance before sleep. I repeated it before the Prophet, and when I reached Allahumma man to bikidabika ladi and zalta, O Allah, I believe in your book, which you have revealed. I said, Warazulika and your apostle. The Prophet said, no, but say, Wanabiyaka ladi arzalta, your prophet whom you have sent, instead.